My hands were steady as I lifted the tray of champagne flutes. The entire wedding hall had frozen except for one sound, the gut-wrenching sobs of a little girl. I glanced toward the center of the ballroom where every server had been instructed to keep their distance. The child's cries cut through the air, sharp and desperate, and I watched as the man holding her, an imposing figure in a black tailored suit with tattoos crawling up his neck, looked more helpless than any powerful man should ever look. Our eyes met across the glittering room. His were dark, fathomless storms, burning with something between rage and desperation. Before my supervisor could pull me back, my feet were already moving toward the untouchable pair. I didn't know that the man was Antonio De Luca, the most feared mafia boss in New York. I only knew that no little girl should cry like her heart was breaking. The coffee stain on my white server's blouse wouldn't fade no matter how many times I scrubbed it. I'd worked a double shift at the diner on Fifth Avenue, barely had time to change, and now stood in the employee locker room of the Grand Bellamy Hotel, trying to look presentable for the evening's wedding banquet. My reflection in the scratched mirror showed the truth I tried to hide. Exhaustion etched into the shadows beneath my eyes. My dark hair pulled into a tight bun that made my scalp ache. 24 years old, and I felt like I'd lived twice that. "Emily, we need you at Station 3. Claire, the banquet manager, snapped her fingers from the doorway. I grabbed my tray and moved through the opulent ballroom. The venue dripped with wealth I could only imagine, crystal chandeliers casting diamonds of light across white silk, the scent of roses and expensive perfume thick in the air. I didn't belong here. Every shift reminded me of that. The evening had been chaotic since 5 o'clock, socialites, business moguls, people whose jewelry cost more than my rent for the year. I navigated between tables with practiced invisibility, smiling politely while my feet throbbed in my cheap heels. This was supposed to be just another wedding. Just another night of serving people who would never see me. Until I heard her cry. I couldn't stop thinking about his eyes. 3 days had passed since the wedding, and I was still replaying that moment, Antonio De Luca staring at me like I'd performed some kind of miracle. All I'd done was crouch down with a lollipop and speak softly to his daughter. But the way Bella had leaned into me, her tiny fists clutching my uniform, her sobs fading into hiccups against my shoulder, it felt like something had shifted in the universe. Or maybe just in my small, insignificant life. "You're burning the eggs again." I jumped, spatula clattering against the pan. My roommate, Jess, stood in the doorway of our shoebox kitchen, arms crossed, one eyebrow raised in that judgmental way she perfected over the 2 years we'd lived together. "Sorry." I scraped the blackened eggs into the trash. "I was just thinking about him." Jess moved to the coffee maker, her silk robe, a gift from whatever banker she was currently dating, swishing around her legs. "You've been weird since Saturday night. Spill." I turned off the stove and leaned against the counter, my fingers finding the card in my sweatpants pocket. I'd been carrying it everywhere. Sleek black cardstock, expensive weight, with nothing but a phone number embossed in silver. No name. No explanation. Just, "Call me. For Bella." "A man gave me his number," I said finally. Jess's eyes lit up. "Ooh, a wedding hookup? Please tell me he's loaded. You need someone who can actually take you somewhere nicer than that depressing diner you work at." "It's not like that." I pulled out the card, holding it between 2 fingers like it might bite me. He has a daughter. She was crying at the wedding, and I helped calm her down. He wants me to call about her." Jess snatched the card from my hand, studying it with the intensity she usually reserved for designer handbags. "Just a phone number? That's either very classy or very sketchy." She looked up at me. "What's his name?" I hesitated. "Antonio De Luca." The color drained from Jess's face. She actually took a step back, thrusting the card at me like it had caught fire. "Are you insane? Emily, please tell me you're joking." "You know him." "Know of him. Everyone does." She lowered her voice even though we were alone in our apartment. Antonio De Luca is a crime boss, Like, actual organized crime. My ex-boyfriend's firm handled a case that tangentially involved his businesses, and they were terrified the entire time. People who cross him disappear. My stomach twisted. I'd heard whispers at the wedding, staff members going quiet when he walked past, the way even the bride's father had seemed nervous shaking his hand. But hearing it from Jess made it real in a way I'd been avoiding. He just wants me to help with his daughter, I said weakly. His daughter who is probably being raised in a house full of guns and criminals. Jess grabbed my shoulders, forcing me to look at her. I love you, but you have the worst instincts. Remember the guy who said he was a freelance entrepreneur, and turned out to be running a pyramid scheme? Or the actor who was actually married with 3 kids? That was twice. 2 bad calls. And this would be the bad call that gets you killed. She released me, shaking her head. Throw away the card. Pretend it never happened. You served some champagne, comforted a kid, end of story. But it wasn't the end of the story. That was the problem. I looked around our apartment, the peeling paint, the radiator that clanked all night, the stack of bills on the counter that I'd been trying to ignore. Past due notices from my student loans. A second notice from the electric company. The reminder that my mom's nursing home expenses were increasing again. I was drowning, working 2 jobs and barely keeping my head above water. And Jess, sweet as she could be, didn't understand what it was like to have nobody. She had parents who sent her money when she needed it, a safety net I'd never had. I should get ready for my shift, I murmured. Jess's expression softened. I'm not trying to be a bitch. I'm trying to keep you alive. Promise me you'll throw away that card. I promise, I lied. The lunch rush at the diner was brutal. My feet ached, my lower back screamed, and I'd had coffee spilled on me twice by the same businessman who hadn't apologized either time. When my shift finally ended at 3, I stood outside on the grimy sidewalk, the spring sunshine doing nothing to warm the chill in my bones. I pulled out the card. Call me. For Bella. I thought about those sobs, the way they'd torn through that elegant ballroom. I thought about Antonio's face when Bella had finally calmed in my arms, shock and relief and something else I couldn't name. And I thought about Bella herself, her little fingers clutching my uniform, the way she'd looked at me with those enormous brown eyes like I was the answer to something. Jess was right. This was a bad idea. Antonio De Luca was dangerous. His world was dangerous. But Bella was just a little girl who'd lost her mother. Before I could change my mind, I dialed the number. It rang once. I knew you would call. His voice was different than I remembered, deeper, rougher, like whiskey and smoke. It sent an involuntary shiver down my spine. Mr. De Luca, I said, trying to sound professional and not like my heart was hammering against my ribs. This is Emily Walsh. From the wedding. I know who you are. There was something almost amused in his tone. You're the woman who did what no one else could. You helped my daughter. She seemed upset. I have younger cousins, so I'm used to. Don't diminish what you did. His voice turned sharp, commanding. Bella hasn't stopped crying since her mother died 8 months ago. Nannies, therapists, family members, no one could reach her. Until you. The weight of that statement settled on my chest. 8 months of tears. 8 months of a father watching his child break apart and not knowing how to fix it. I'm sorry for your loss, I whispered. I don't need your sympathy. I need you. He paused, and I heard background noise, voices, the sound of a door closing. When he spoke again, his voice was quieter, almost vulnerable. Bella has been asking for the nice lady with the candy. She wants to see you. I want you to come to my home. Name your price. My price. Like I was something that could be bought. Except wasn't I? Wasn't I desperate enough, broke enough, that I'd already made the call? I don't want money, I said, surprising myself. But I would like to see Bella again. Make sure she's okay. Silence stretched between us. Then, a car will pick you up tomorrow. 4 o'clock. Text me your address. Wait, But he'd already hung up. I stared at my phone, at the number still glowing on the screen. Jess's warning echoed in my head. Bad instincts. Bad call. Gets you killed. But all I could hear was Bella's sobs, and all I could see was a little girl who just needed someone to care. I typed out my address and hit send before I could talk myself out of it. There was no going back now. The black Mercedes arrived at exactly 4 o'clock. I'd spent the entire day second-guessing myself, changing outfits 3 times before settling on simple jeans and a sweater, professional enough to seem serious, casual enough not to look like I was trying too hard. Jess had left for a yoga class with a pointed reminder to text her every hour or she'd call the police, which would have been touching if she hadn't said it with such grim certainty that I'd need rescuing. The driver didn't speak. He simply opened the rear door, waited for me to slide into leather seats that probably cost more than my monthly rent, and then pulled smoothly into traffic. I watched the city transform through the tinted windows, my neighborhood's crumbling brownstones giving way to gentrified blocks, then to tree-lined streets I'd only seen in movies, and finally to an area where the homes hid behind walls and gates. We turned onto a private road. My breath caught. Iron gates swung open automatically, revealing a driveway that wound through manicured lawns that belonged in a magazine spread. The estate rose ahead like something out of a European postcard, pale stone, tall windows, architecture that whispered old money and older power. But it was the men stationed along the driveway that made my palms sweat. 4 of them that I could see, dressed in dark suits, each with a telltale bulge of weapons beneath their jackets. They watched our car pass with expressions that revealed nothing. What am I doing here? The driver opened my door. I stepped out onto marble pavement, my worn sneakers squeaking slightly. The front entrance loomed before me, massive double doors, carved with that looked ancient and expensive. Before I could knock, the doors opened. A woman in her 50s, elegant in a grey dress, regarded me with shrewd eyes. Miss Walsh. I'm Maria, the house manager. Mr. DeLuca is expecting you. I followed her inside, trying not to gape like a tourist. The foyer alone was larger than my entire apartment, marble floors that gleamed like mirrors, a chandelier that dripped crystal, twin staircases curving up to the 2nd floor. Original artwork hung on cream-colored walls. Everything screamed wealth, but it was cold. Beautiful and cold. Then I heard the screaming. Mama. I want Mama. Mama. The anguished shrieks came from somewhere above. Maria's expression tightened, but she didn't break stride as she led me toward the staircase. Bella has been difficult today, she said quietly. Mr. DeLuca requested you come immediately. We climbed the stairs, the screams growing louder. My heart hammered as Maria led me down a hallway lined with closed doors. She stopped at one that stood ajar, chaos spilling through the opening. No, I don't want you. I want Mama. I stepped inside. The bedroom was a little girl's dream, princess bed with gauzy curtains, toys stacked neatly on shelves, a reading nook with stuffed animals. But the dream was shattered by the nightmare playing out in its center. Bella, her face red and streaked with tears, thrashed in Antonio's arms. He held her carefully, like she might break, but she fought him with the desperate strength of grief. 2 women I assumed were nannies stood helplessly to the side. A tray of untouched food lay overturned on the floor. Antonio's eyes found mine. In that moment, stripped of his power and control, he looked exactly like what he was, a father drowning. Miss Walsh, he said, his voice strained. I'm sorry you have to see Mama. Bella's scream cut him off. I moved without thinking, dropping to my knees on the carpet. Bella, I said softly. Bella, sweetheart, do you remember me? Her screams faltered into hiccuping sobs. Through her tears, she turned her head, those big brown eyes finding mine. "I'm Emily," I continued gently. "We met at the big party. You had a beautiful dress, remember? Pink with sparkles." The wedding," Bella whimpered. "That's right. And you were so brave." I reached into my purse slowly, pulling out the small bag of lollipops I'd brought. "I thought maybe you'd like another one of these. Cherry or grape?" "Cherry," she whispered. Antonio carefully lowered her to the floor. Bella took 2 shaky steps toward me, then collapsed into my arms, burying her face in my shoulder. Her little body shook with sobs, but they were quieter now, softer. I stroked her hair, murmuring nonsense words like I used to do with my younger cousins. When I looked up, Antonio was staring at me with an expression I couldn't quite read. Wonder, maybe. Or disbelief. "How do you do that?" he asked roughly. "I'm not doing anything special." I adjusted Bella on my lap, unwrapping the lollipop and offering it to her. "She just needs someone who isn't afraid to sit with her pain." The 2 nannies exchanged glances. Maria stood in the doorway, watching with keen interest. But Antonio, he looked like I'd just spoken a truth he'd been avoiding. "Everyone keeps trying to distract her," he said quietly, moving to sit on the floor beside us. This close, I could smell his cologne, expensive, woodsy. "Toys, sweets, trips to the park. They treat her grief like a problem to be solved." "It's not a problem." I met his eyes. "It's love with nowhere to go." Bella had gone quiet, the lollipop in her mouth, her head resting against my chest. Her breathing slowed, steadied. Within minutes, her eyes drifted closed. "She hasn't slept through the afternoon in months," one of the nannies whispered. Antonio rose smoothly, gesturing for the others to leave. They filed out silently, Maria closing the door behind them. When we were alone, just me, holding his sleeping daughter, and him, the air seemed to shift. "I need you to stay," he said. "It wasn't a request. Mr. De Luca." "Antonio." He crouched beside us again. "And I'm not asking you to be another nanny who doesn't understand her. I'm asking you to be what she needs. Whatever that is. I don't know anything about being a caretaker." "You know enough." His gaze was intense, burning. "More than anyone I've hired. Name your terms. Salary, hours, anything. But please, help my daughter." I looked down at Bella, peaceful for the first time since I'd arrived. This little girl who'd lost everything. This man who had all the power in the world but couldn't fix the one thing that mattered. "I'd need to keep my weekend shifts at the diner," I said quietly. "To pay my bills while." "You'll earn more in a week here than you do in 3 months at that diner." He pulled out his phone, typed something. "What are your current expenses?" "That's not. What are your expenses?" Something in his tone made me answer. "Around 3,000 a month. Rent, utilities, student loans, my mother's care facility. You'll receive 10,000 monthly. Healthcare included. Room here if you need it." My stomach dropped. "That's too much." "It's a fraction of what you're worth if you can give my daughter peace." He stood, offering me his hand. "Do we have an agreement, Emily Walsh?" I stared at his outstretched hand. Calloused, strong, probably stained with things I didn't want to know about. Behind him, through the window, I could see armed guards patrolling the grounds. This wasn't just accepting a job. This was stepping into a world I'd only seen in movies. A world of danger and shadows and secrets. But Bella stirred in my arms, murmuring something soft and heartbreaking in her sleep. I took his hand. "We have an agreement." His fingers closed around mine, warm, firm, sealing a bargain I suspected would change everything. "Welcome to the family, Emily," Antonio said, and something in his voice made it sound less like a greeting and more like a warning. The first week passed in a blur of small moments that felt enormous. Bella clung to me like I was her lifeline, her tiny hand finding mine at breakfast, during walks through the garden, even when I tried to step away to give her space. She didn't talk much, just whispered requests for water, or to read another story, or to stay with her until she fell asleep. But her tears came less frequently, and twice I'd heard her laugh, a sound so pure it made my chest ache. Antonio watched it all from the shadows. I'd catch glimpses of him throughout the day, standing in doorways, pausing at the top of the stairs, his dark eyes tracking Bella's movements like he was trying to memorize her smile. He never interrupted, never inserted himself into our time together. But his presence was constant, a silent guardian who didn't seem to know how to bridge the distance between himself and his daughter. The duality of him was jarring. On Tuesday morning, I'd watched him through the cracked door of his office, his voice sharp as a blade as he conducted a meeting with 3 men who looked like they could break bones without breaking a sweat. "I don't accept excuses," he'd said, his tone cold enough to frost the windows. "Fix it, or I'll find someone who can." The men had practically scrambled from the room. But that same afternoon, I'd found him in Bella's playroom, sitting cross-legged on the floor with a stuffed rabbit in his hands, looking completely lost. When he noticed me, something vulnerable flickered across his face before his mask slammed back into place. "She used to love this rabbit," he'd said quietly. "Her mother bought it for her first birthday." He'd set it down carefully, like it was made of glass, and walked out without another word. The staff whispered. I picked up fragments in passing, Maria speaking in rapid Italian to one of the guards, their voices dropping when I entered the kitchen. The nannies exchanging glances when Antonio's name came up. Even the groundskeeper, an older man named Sal, had given me a pitying look when I'd asked how long he'd worked for the De Luca family. It was Rosa, the cook, who finally told me the truth. I'd come down to the kitchen late one night, unable to sleep in the guest room I'd been given, a space more luxurious than anywhere I'd ever lived, with a 4-poster bed and an ensuite bathroom with heated floors. Rosa was preparing dough for the next day's bread, her weathered hands working the mixture with practiced efficiency. "You're good for the little one," she said without looking up. "First person who's helped since," she stopped, pressing her lips together. "Since what?" I asked softly, settling onto a stool at the counter. Rosa's hands stilled. She looked toward the doorway, as if checking for listeners, then met my eyes. "Since Mrs. De Luca died. 15 months ago. I heard it was a car accident. Incident." Rosa's laugh was bitter. "That's what they tell outsiders. It was a bomb, Miss Emily. Under her car. Meant for him." She nodded toward the ceiling, toward where Antonio's private quarters were. But she took Bella to school that morning instead of letting the driver do it. She wanted extra time with her daughter. My stomach turned to ice. Oh God. Bella was in the back seat. The explosion killed Mrs. De Luca instantly, but Bella, she saw everything. Lived through it. Rosa crossed herself. She hasn't been the same since. Won't speak about it. Just cries and cries, like her heart is broken into pieces no one can put back together. "And Antonio?" I whispered. He wasn't always so cold. Rosa's expression softened. Before, he was different. Smiled more. Played with Bella. But after he buried his wife, something in him died too. He built bigger walls, hired more guards. Became the man everyone fears. She met my eyes. He blames himself. For all of it. I sat in the darkened kitchen long after Rosa went to bed, her words echoing in my mind. A bomb meant for Antonio. His wife dead. His daughter traumatized. And him, left to carry the weight of it all alone. I found him 3 nights later on the terrace outside his office. It was past midnight. I'd been up with Bella after a nightmare, her small body shaking as she cried for her mama, and once she'd finally fallen back asleep, I'd been too wired to return to my own room. I'd wandered through the quiet mansion, and that's when I'd seen the light spilling from the open terrace doors. Antonio stood at the railing, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the dark expanse of the grounds. He'd shed his suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up to reveal forearms marked with ink, intricate designs I couldn't quite make out in the shadows. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "How did you know it was me?" "Your footsteps are lighter than my guards. Less certain." He glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "How is she?" "Asleep now. She had a bad dream." He flinched almost imperceptibly. "She has them every night." "I know." I stepped onto the terrace, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my arms. "You should talk to her about it. About her mother." "I don't know how." The admission seemed torn from him. "What do I say? That I'm sorry her mother is dead because of me? That the life I chose made her a target?" He downed the rest of his whiskey. "I can face down rivals, negotiate with murderers, build an empire from blood and fear. But I can't comfort my own daughter." "You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be present." "Present." He laughed, dark and hollow. "I'm suffocating her with presents, guards, nannies, every luxury she could want. And still she cries." "She doesn't need luxury, Antonio. She needs you." I moved to stand beside him at the railing. "Not the boss. Not the protector. Just her father." He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. When he finally spoke, his voice was barely above a whisper. "I don't know how to be just that anymore. After Isabella died, I had to become harder, crueler, to make sure it never happened again, to make sure Bella was safe." He turned to face me fully, and in the moonlight, I could see the cracks in his armor. "But what good is keeping her safe if I can't make her happy?" My heart twisted. This man who commanded fear and respect, who built walls and kept the world at arm's length, he was as broken as his daughter. "Just better at hiding it." "You're not alone in this," I said quietly. "You don't have to carry it all by yourself." Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or hope. His hand lifted, hesitating, before he gently touched my cheek. His palm was warm, calloused, and the gesture was so tender it stole my breath. "Why are you here, Emily?" he asked. "Really? You could have walked away. Should have walked away." "Because Bella needs me." I swallowed hard. "And maybe you do too." The air between us shifted, charged with something I didn't want to name. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me. Part of me, a reckless, foolish part, wanted him to. But he dropped his hand, stepping back, the walls slamming back into place. "You should get some sleep," he said, his voice carefully neutral. "Bella will want you in the morning." "Antonio." "Good night, Emily." I left him standing alone on the terrace, but as I walked back through the mansion, I realized something that should have terrified me but instead felt inevitable. I wasn't just here for Bella anymore. I was here for him too. And in this world of shadows and danger, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The afternoon sun was perfect, warm without being hot, the sky a brilliant blue that made everything feel possible. Bella had begged to go to the park all morning, tugging on my hand with an excitement I hadn't seen in her before. "Please, Emily? Please? I want to feed the ducks." How could I say no to that? Antonio had been reluctant, his brow furrowing as he looked between his daughter's hopeful face and the security monitors in his office. But Bella had worn him down, or maybe I had, when I'd quietly pointed out that she needed normal moments, not just the gilded cage of the estate. "Fine," he'd relented. "But Marco and Luca go with you. And you stay within sight of them at all times." Marco and Luca were two of Antonio's most trusted guards, silent, efficient men who moved like shadows. They flanked us now as we walked through Riverside Park, keeping a respectful distance but never letting us out of their sight. Bella skipped ahead, clutching the bag of bread pieces we'd brought for the ducks. It was Rosa, the cook, who finally told me the truth. I'd come down to the kitchen late one night, unable to sleep in the guest room I'd been given, a space more luxurious than anywhere I'd ever lived, with a 4-poster bed and an ensuite bathroom with heated floors. Rosa was preparing dough for the next day's bread, her weathered hands working the mixture with practiced efficiency. "You're good for the little one," she said without looking up. "First person who's helped since," she stopped, pressing her lips together. "Since what?" I asked softly, settling onto a stool at the counter. Rosa's hands stilled. She looked toward the doorway, as if checking for listeners, then met my eyes. "Since Mrs. DeLuca died. 15 months ago. I heard it was a car accident. Incident." Rosa's laugh was bitter. "That's what they tell outsiders. It was a bomb, Miss Emily. Under her car. Meant for him." She nodded toward the ceiling, toward where Antonio's private quarters were. "But she took Bella to school that morning instead of letting the driver do it. She wanted extra time with her daughter." My stomach turned to ice. Oh God. Bella was in the back seat. The explosion killed Mrs. DeLuca instantly, but Bella, she saw everything. Lived through it. Rosa crossed herself. She hasn't been the same since. Won't speak about it. Just cries and cries, like her heart is broken into pieces no one can put back together. "And Antonio?" I whispered. "He wasn't always so cold." Rosa's expression softened. "Before, he was different. Smiled more. Played with Bella. But after he buried his wife, something in him died too. He built bigger walls, hired more guards. Became the man everyone fears." She met my eyes. "He blames himself. For all of it." I sat in the darkened kitchen long after Rosa went to bed, her words echoing in my mind. A bomb meant for Antonio. His wife dead. His daughter traumatized. And him, left to carry the weight of it all alone. I found him 3 nights later on the terrace outside his office. It was past midnight. I'd been up with Bella after a nightmare, her small body shaking as she cried for her mama, and once she'd finally fallen back asleep, I'd been too wired to return to my own room. I'd wandered through the quiet mansion, and that's when I'd seen the light spilling from the open terrace doors. Antonio stood at the railing, a glass of whiskey in his hand, staring out at the dark expanse of the grounds. He'd shed his suit jacket, his white shirt rolled up to reveal forearms marked with ink, intricate designs I couldn't quite make out in the shadows. "Can't sleep?" he asked without turning. "How did you know it was me?" "Your footsteps are lighter than my guards. Less certain." He glanced over his shoulder, his expression unreadable. "How is she?" "Asleep now. She had a bad dream." He flinched almost imperceptibly. "She has them every night." "I know." I stepped onto the terrace, the cool night air raising goosebumps on my arms. "You should talk to her about it. About her mother." "I don't know how." The admission seemed torn from him. "What do I say? That I'm sorry her mother is dead because of me? That the life I chose made her a target?" He downed the rest of his whiskey. "I can face down rivals, negotiate with murderers, build an empire from blood and fear. But I can't comfort my own daughter. You're not supposed to be perfect. You're supposed to be present." "Present." He laughed, dark and hollow. "I'm suffocating her with presents, guards, nannies, every luxury she could want. And still she cries. She doesn't need luxury, Antonio. She needs you." I moved to stand beside him at the railing. Not the boss. Not the protector. Just her father. He was quiet for a long moment, his jaw working. When he finally spoke, His voice was barely above a whisper. I don't know how to be just that anymore. After Isabella died, I had to become harder, crueler, to make sure it never happened again, to make sure Bella was safe. He turned to face me fully, and in the moonlight, I could see the cracks in his armor. But what good is keeping her safe if I can't make her happy? My heart twisted. This man who commanded fear and respect, who built walls and kept the world at arm's length, he was as broken as his daughter. Just better at hiding it. You're not alone in this, I said quietly. You don't have to carry it all by yourself. Something flickered in his eyes, surprise, maybe, or hope. His hand lifted, hesitating, before he gently touched my cheek. His palm was warm, calloused, and the gesture was so tender it stole my breath. Why are you here, Emily? He asked. Really? You could have walked away. Should have walked away. Because Bella needs me. I swallowed hard. And maybe you do too. The air between us shifted, charged with something I didn't want to name. His thumb brushed across my cheekbone, and for a heartbeat, I thought he might kiss me. Part of me, a reckless, foolish part, wanted him to. But he dropped his hand, stepping back, the walls slamming back into place. You should get some sleep, he said, his voice carefully neutral. Bella will want you in the morning. Antonio. Good night, Emily. I left him standing alone on the terrace, but as I walked back through the mansion, I realized something that should have terrified me but instead felt inevitable. I wasn't just here for Bella anymore. I was here for him too. And in this world of shadows and danger, that might be the most dangerous thing of all. The afternoon sun was perfect, warm without being hot, the sky a brilliant blue that made everything feel possible. Bella had begged to go to the park all morning, tugging on my hand with an excitement I hadn't seen in her before. Please, Emily? Please? I want to feed the ducks. How could I say no to that? Antonio had been reluctant, his brow furrowing as he looked between his daughter's hopeful face and the security monitors in his office. But Bella had worn him down, or maybe I had, when I'd quietly pointed out that she needed normal moments, not just the gilded cage of the estate. Fine, he'd relented. But Marco and Luca go with you. And you stay within sight of them at all times. Marco and Luca were two of Antonio's most trusted guards, silent, efficient men who moved like shadows. They flanked us now as we walked through Riverside Park, keeping a respectful distance but never letting us out of their sight. Bella skipped ahead, clutching the bag of bread pieces we'd brought for the ducks. And I was trapped inside it, whether I wanted to be or not. My arm throbbed beneath the fresh bandages. The doctor Antonio had summoned, a discreet man who'd asked no questions, had cleaned and stitched the wound, pronouncing me lucky. 2 inches to the left, and it would have shattered bone, he'd said, as if that was supposed to make me feel better. I sat in my room 3 days after the attack, staring out the window at the manicured gardens below. Bella was napping, finally, after hours of clinging to me, terrified I might disappear if she let go. My whole body ached with exhaustion, but sleep felt impossible. A soft knock interrupted my thoughts. Come in, I called, expecting Maria with more tea I wouldn't drink. Instead, Antonio stepped through the doorway. He looked terrible. Dark circles shadowed his eyes, stubble covered his jaw, and his shirt was wrinkled, details that would have been unthinkable a week ago. This was a man who commanded perfection in everything. But now, he looked like he hadn't slept since the park. I'm not disturbing you? His voice was rough, uncertain in a way I'd never heard from him. No. I was just thinking. He closed the door behind him, leaning against it like he needed the support. For a long moment, he just looked at me, really looked, his dark eyes traveling from my face to the bandaged arm resting in my lap. I should have come sooner, he said finally. To check on you. But he stopped, jaw clenching. I couldn't face you. Why not? Because every time I close my eyes, I see you bleeding. His hands curled into fists at his sides. I see you throwing yourself in front of Bella, taking a bullet meant for her, and his voice cracked. You could have died, Emily. Because I brought you into my world. I stood, crossing the room to him despite the protest from my bruised body. I made that choice. You didn't force me. Didn't I? His laugh was bitter. I offered you money you desperately needed. I manipulated you with my daughter's tears. I pulled you into a life where masked men attack in parks and innocence gets you killed. Stop. I reached for his hand, feeling the tension vibrating through him. You're not responsible for what those men did. Yes, I am. He pulled away, pacing to the window. I'm responsible for all of it. For Isabella's death. For Bella's trauma. For the target on your back now. He braced his hands against the window frame, his shoulders rigid. I should send you away. Pay you whatever you need and get you as far from here as possible. Fear spiked through me. Is that what you want? What I want, he spun to face me, and the raw emotion in his eyes stole my breath. What I want is dangerous. Selfish. Wrong. My heart hammered. Tell me anyway. He stalked toward me, closing the distance in 3 strides. This close, I could see the war raging behind his expression, control battling with something wild and desperate. I want to keep you here, he said, his voice dropping to barely above a whisper. Not for Bella. Not because you're good with her, though you are. I want you here because for the first time in 15 months, I feel something other than rage. His hand lifted, hovering near my face. Since Isabella died, I've been dead inside. Going through motions. Building walls. Becoming the monster everyone fears. His fingers finally touched my cheek, achingly gentle. And then you walked into that ballroom with your cheap uniform and your kind eyes, and you made me feel alive again. I couldn't breathe. Couldn't think. Could only feel the warmth of his palm against my skin, the intensity of his gaze boring into mine. Antonio. Tell me to stop, he whispered. Tell me this is wrong. That you're afraid of me, of what I am. Tell me, and I'll walk away. I'll never touch you again. I should have said it. Should have been smart, self-preserving. This man was dangerous in every possible way, his world, his enemies, the power he wielded. Loving him would be signing my own death warrant. But when I opened my mouth, different words came out. I'm drawn to you. My voice shook, but I held his gaze. I shouldn't be. You're right about all of it. Your world is dangerous, you're dangerous. Every logical part of me knows I should run. I covered his hand with mine, pressing it harder against my cheek. But I'm not afraid of you, Antonio. I'm afraid of how much I want this. Want you. Something in him broke. His other hand cupped my face, tilting it up toward his. Emily, he breathed, my name a prayer and a curse. If I kiss you, I won't be able to let you go. Then don't let go. For a heartbeat, he hesitated, his last chance to be noble, to protect me from himself. Then his mouth crashed down on mine, and the world ignited. The kiss was nothing like I'd imagined. It wasn't gentle or tentative. It was hungry, desperate, 15 months of grief and loneliness and need poured into the press of his lips against mine. His hand slid into my hair, angling my head to deepen the kiss, and I gasped against his mouth. He swallowed the sound, pulling me closer, careful of my injured arm but otherwise unrestrained. I felt his heart pounding against my chest, racing as fast as my own. My good hand fisted in his shirt, holding on like he was the only solid thing in a spinning world. When he finally pulled back, we were both breathing hard. His forehead rested against mine, his eyes closed, his expression torn between desire and anguish. This is madness, he whispered. I know. You should leave. Before you're in too deep. I'm already in too deep. I pressed a soft kiss to the corner of his mouth. I think I have been since the moment you looked at me in that ballroom. He made a sound, half groan, half surrender, and kissed me again. Slower this time, but no less intense. His hands mapped my face, my neck, sliding down my arms with reverent care. When his fingers brushed near my bandage, he gentled further, as if I were something precious he might break. I don't know how to do this, he admitted against my lips. How to be with someone. How to let someone in. We'll figure it out together. What if I can't keep you safe? I pulled back enough to meet his eyes. What if you can? What if we both survive this, and on the other side, there's something beautiful? Beautiful. He traced my lower lip with his thumb, wonder softening his features. I'd forgotten what that word felt like. He kissed me once more, tender and aching. You're dangerous, Emily Walsh. More dangerous than any rival I've ever faced. Why? Because you make me hope. His arms circled my waist, drawing me against him. And hope is the most dangerous thing a man like me can feel. I laid my head against his chest, listening to the steady thrum of his heartbeat. Outside, armed guards patrolled the grounds. Beyond the gates, enemies plotted and dangers lurked. But here in this moment, wrapped in Antonio's arms, I felt safe. Maybe that was foolish. Maybe hope was dangerous. But as his hand stroked through my hair and his lips pressed against my temple, I decided I didn't care. I'd already jumped. Already fallen. Now, all I could do was trust he'd catch me. And pray we both survived the landing. We tried to be careful. Stolen moments in hallways when Bella was asleep. His hand finding mine under the dinner table, his thumb tracing circles on my palm. Late nights in his office where conversations about security measures dissolved into confessions whispered in the dark. We were playing a dangerous game, dancing around something that felt inevitable and terrifying in equal measure. The mansion staff noticed. Maria's knowing glances. Rosa's approving smiles when Antonio lingered in the kitchen while I prepared Bella's breakfast. Even the guards seemed to soften their expressions when they saw us together, though they remained vigilant as ever. Because the threats hadn't stopped. 2 days after our first kiss, Antonio's second-in-command, a hard-eyed man named Dante, reported intercepted communications. Rival families were circling, sensing weakness. The park attack had been the opening salvo, a message that Antonio De Luca was vulnerable through his daughter. And now through me. You need to increase her detail, Dante said during a meeting I wasn't supposed to overhear. I'd been passing Antonio's office when raised voices drew me to pause outside. They know about the waitress. They're asking questions. Her name is Emily. Antonio's voice was cold steel. And she already has 4 guards assigned to her. It's not enough. Sir, forgive me, but she's a liability. A civilian caught in the crossfire. If they take her, then I will burn their world to ash. The absolute certainty in Antonio's tone sent chills down my spine. No one touches her. No one even looks at her. Make that clear to every family in New York. She is under my protection, and I will show no mercy. I slipped away before they could discover me listening, but the conversation haunted me for days. Liability. That's what I'd become. Not just a caretaker for Bella, but a weakness to exploit. A target painted on my back simply because Antonio De Luca wanted me. But when he found me later that night, his lips on mine erasing the fear, I couldn't bring myself to walk away. Bella's progress was miraculous. She smiled more. Laughed freely. Started asking questions about her mother, hesitant at first, then with growing confidence as I answered honestly, sharing what Antonio had told me about Isabella's kindness, her love for art, the way she'd sung Italian lullabies. Mama had a pretty voice, Bella said one afternoon as we colored in her playroom. Papa doesn't sing anymore. Maybe he's forgotten how, I suggested gently. Can you teach him to remember? Oh, sweetheart. If only it were that simple. But something was shifting in Antonio too. He joined us for dinner more often, listening to Bella's stories about the butterflies in the garden or the picture books we'd read. He started tucking her in at night, reading to her in Italian while I watched from the doorway, my heart twisting at the tenderness on his face. One evening, after a particularly good day where Bella had played without crying once, she wrapped her arms around my neck at bedtime. "I love you, Mommy," she whispered. The world stopped. I froze, my breath catching. From the corner of my eye, I saw Antonio in the doorway, his entire body going rigid. Bella, oblivious to the weight of what she'd said, snuggled deeper into my embrace. "I love you too, sweetheart," I managed, my voice thick with emotion. She fell asleep within minutes, her breathing evening out into soft snores. I carefully extracted myself from her bed and turned to find Antonio still standing there, his face a battlefield of emotions I couldn't fully read. He left without a word. I found him 20 minutes later on the terrace, the same place we'd shared our first real conversation weeks ago. He held a glass of whiskey but hadn't drunk any of it, just stared out at the dark grounds like they held answers he couldn't find. "Antonio. She called you Mommy." His voice was raw, scraped hollow. "She hasn't used that word since Isabella died." I moved to stand beside him. "I'm sorry. I should have corrected her, but I didn't want to." "Don't apologize." He finally looked at me, and the anguish in his eyes nearly broke me. "You've given her something I couldn't. Peace. Happiness. A mother's love." His hand found mine, gripping tight. "But it destroys me, Emily. Because every time she heals, every time she smiles, I'm terrified of losing this. Of losing you." "You won't. You don't know that." He pulled me against him, his arms banding around me like he could hold back fate through sheer will. "My enemies know about you now. They're watching, waiting for an opportunity. And Bella." His voice broke. "If they took either of you, if I had to choose." "You won't have to choose." I tilted my head back to meet his gaze. "We're safe here. You've made sure of it." "Safety is an illusion in my world." His thumb brushed my cheekbone. "But God help me, I can't let you go. I've tried. I've told myself 100 times that the noble thing would be to send you away, give you money and a new identity somewhere far from New York." His forehead pressed against mine. "But I'm not noble, Emily. I'm selfish. And I want you too much." "Then stop trying to push me away." "Even knowing what it costs? What it might cost?" I answered by kissing him, pouring everything I couldn't say into the press of my lips against his. He responded instantly, desperately, his hands tangling in my hair. The kiss was different than before, less about discovery, more about claiming. About choosing each other despite the dangers. When we broke apart, both breathing hard, he rested his forehead against mine. "Loving me puts a target on your back," he whispered. "You understand that? Every enemy I've made, every rival who wants to see me fall, they'll come for you. They'll use you to hurt me." "I understand. And you're staying anyway?" I thought about Bella's sleeping face, peaceful for the first time in months. I thought about Antonio's rare smiles, the way his defenses crumbled when we were alone. I thought about the strange, dangerous, beautiful thing we were building in the shadows of his empire. "I'm staying," I confirmed. "Then we do this right." His voice turned fierce, protective. "No more separate rooms. No more hiding. You and Bella move into the family wing with me. Doubled security. You don't leave the estate without me or Dante. And if anything feels wrong, even slightly off, you tell me immediately." "Antonio. These are my terms, Emily. Non-negotiable." His hands framed my face. "I couldn't save Isabella. But I will save you. Both of you. Even if it means becoming the monster they all think I am." There was something terrifying in his expression, a promise of violence to anyone who threatened what was his. But beneath it, I saw the truth: he loved us. Maybe he couldn't say the words yet, but it radiated from every protective instinct, every fierce declaration. "Okay," I agreed softly. "We'll do it your way." He kissed me again, slower this time but no less intense. And as his lips moved against mine, as his arms held me like I was something precious worth protecting, I let myself believe we might survive this. That love might be stronger than the shadows closing in. But somewhere in the back of my mind, a small voice whispered what we both knew: in Antonio's world, happy endings were never guaranteed. Only fought for. And sometimes, even love wasn't enough to keep the darkness at bay. That night, I moved my belongings to the family wing. Bella's room was next to mine, connected by an adjoining door. Antonio's suite was across the hall, close enough to protect us, far enough to maintain some propriety. But when I woke at 2 a.m. from nightmares of masked men and gunfire, it was his door I knocked on. And when he opened it, seeing the terror in my eyes, he simply pulled me inside and held me until the shaking stopped. We fell asleep in his bed, fully clothed, his arms wrapped around me like a fortress. And for the first time since the attack, I felt safe enough to truly rest. Even though the morning would bring new threats. Even though loving him was the most dangerous thing I'd ever done. I chose it anyway. I chose him. The bomb was meant for Antonio's car. It detonated in the estate's underground garage at 6 a.m., shaking the entire mansion. I woke to the explosion, my heart seizing with terror as plaster dust rained from the ceiling. Bella screamed from her room, and I was there in seconds, gathering her into my arms even as guards flooded the hallway. "Stay in your rooms." Dante's voice boomed through the chaos. "Now." But all I could think was, where is Antonio? He'd left early for a meeting downtown. He should have been in that garage. Should have been in that car. The next 20 minutes were the longest of my life. I held Bella in my room while she sobbed against my chest, both of us jumping at every sound. Guards shouted in Italian. Footsteps thundered past the door. And through it all, one terrible thought looped endlessly: what if I've lost him? Then the door burst open. Antonio stood there, disheveled and furious, his white shirt torn at the shoulder, a cut above his eyebrow bleeding down his temple. But alive. Alive. Papa. Bella launched herself at him. He caught her, crushing her against his chest while his eyes found mine over her head. The raw relief in his expression mirrored everything I felt. "You're okay," I breathed. The meeting was moved to an earlier time. I left at 5 instead of 6. His voice was hoarse. 15 minutes. That's all that stood between. He couldn't finish. Maria appeared in the doorway. "Mr. De Luca, let me take Bella. Rosa is making her favorite pancakes in the kitchen." Antonio hesitated, then carefully transferred his daughter to Maria's arms. "Keep her on the second floor. Away from the windows." "Si, signore." The moment they left, Antonio was across the room, his hands framing my face, his eyes searching mine with desperate intensity. "Are you hurt?" he demanded. "No, I'm fine." "Antonio, what happened?" "The Torino family." His jaw clenched. "They planted the device last night, bypassed our security. If I'd left at my usual time." He closed his eyes, his hands trembling against my skin. "Emily, I can't do this anymore." Fear spiked through me. "Can't do what?" "Pretend I'm strong enough to keep you at arm's length. Pretend I can protect you without binding you to me completely." He pulled back, pacing the room like a caged animal. "They're escalating. First the park, now this. They know you and Bella are my weaknesses, and they won't stop until they've taken everything from me. Then we increase security again. It's not enough." The words exploded from him. "Don't you understand? There is no amount of guards, No fortress strong enough, not while you exist outside of my name. Not while you're just the caretaker, just the woman living in my house. He stopped pacing, turning to face me fully. I need you to be more than that. My heart hammered. What are you saying? He crossed the distance between us, dropping to his knees in front of me. The gesture was so unexpected, so shocking, this powerful man kneeling at my feet, that my breath stopped completely. I'm saying I can't lose you. His voice cracked on the words. I've faced death 100 times. I've buried people I loved, made enemies who want me dead, lived with violence as my constant companion. But none of it terrifies me the way losing you terrifies me. His hands found mine, gripping tight. I thought I died when Isabella was killed. Thought the best part of me was buried with her. But you brought me back, Emily. You made me remember what it feels like to be human. To love. To hope. Tears blurred my vision. Antonio. Let me finish. He released one of my hands, reaching into his pocket. When he opened his palm, a ring glittered there, a stunning diamond surrounded by sapphires, antique and elegant. This was my grandmother's. She gave it to my grandfather after he saved her life during the war. She told him, we've already survived the worst. Everything after is a gift. His eyes met mine, and I'd never seen such vulnerability in another human being. Be my wife, he said, his voice raw. Not because I'm trying to control you or trap you, but because in my world, marriage means something. It means you're under my protection in a way that even my enemies respect. It means Bella truly becomes yours, legally and in every way that matters. His thumb brushed over my knuckles. Be Bella's mother. Be my partner. Stand beside me, not behind me. Help me be the man I want to be instead of the monster I'm becoming. You're not a monster, I whispered. I am. I've done terrible things. I'll do worse to protect you. His hand tightened on mine. But with you, I'm also a father. A man who can still feel joy. Someone who wants to be better. He lifted the ring. I'll protect you with everything I am. My name, my resources, my life. But more than that, I'll love you. I already do. I think I have since you crouched down with that lollipop and saw my daughter when everyone else only saw danger. The tears spilled over, tracking down my cheeks. This was insane. We'd known each other less than 2 months. His world was violence and shadows. Marrying him meant accepting that danger would always be at our door. But it also meant Bella would have a mother who loved her. It meant Antonio wouldn't face his demons alone. It meant building something beautiful in the midst of darkness. It meant choosing love, even when love was the most dangerous choice of all. Yes, I breathed. His eyes widened, like he'd expected me to refuse. Yes. Yes, I'll marry you. I cupped his face, feeling the stubble rough against my palms, the wetness of tears I hadn't realized he was shedding. I'll be Bella's mother. I'll be your partner. I'll stand beside you against whatever comes. My voice strengthened. And I'll love you, Antonio De Luca. Not despite who you are, but because of it. All of it. He surged upward, his mouth crashing against mine in a kiss that tasted of salt and desperation and promise. His hands tangled in my hair, tilting my head back as he deepened the kiss, and I felt his heart racing against mine, both of us alive, both of us choosing this impossible thing. When he pulled back, he slipped the ring onto my finger with shaking hands. It fit perfectly, the sapphires catching the morning light streaming through the window. It's beautiful, I whispered. You're beautiful. He kissed me again, softer this time. My wife. My partner. Mine. Yours, I agreed. And you're mine too. That's how this works. Something fierce and possessive flared in his eyes. Yes. I'm yours. Every broken, dangerous piece of me. He rested his forehead against mine. I won't let anything happen to you. To either of you. I swear it on my life. I know. I held him tighter. We'll protect each other. Together, he murmured. Together. A knock interrupted us. Dante's voice came through the door, respectful but urgent. Boss, we need you downstairs. We've identified how they breached security. Antonio's expression hardened, the boss sliding back into place. But when he looked at me, the softness remained underneath. I have to handle this. I know. Go. I touched the ring on my finger, still adjusting to its weight. We'll be here when you're done. He kissed me once more, quick and fierce, then stood, squaring his shoulders. At the door he paused, looking back at me. Mrs. DeLuca, he said, testing the words. A small smile ghosted across his lips. I liked the sound of that. Then he was gone, his footsteps receding down the hall, already barking orders in Italian. I sat on the bed, staring at the ring on my finger, my heart still racing. Outside, guards secured the perimeter. Below, Antonio strategized with his men. Somewhere in the city, enemies plotted our destruction. But I just promised to marry the most dangerous man in New York. And somehow, impossibly, it felt like the rightest decision I'd ever made. Because love wasn't about safety. It was about choosing someone even when the world was burning. It was about building a fortress together and defending it with everything you had. It was about hope. And as I touched the ring Antonio's grandmother had worn through a war, I let myself believe that maybe, just maybe, hope would be enough. Even in the shadows. Even in the darkness. We'd find our light. Together. 3 years later. The garden is golden in the late afternoon sun, and I've learned to recognize this hour as my favorite part of the day. Bella's laughter rings across the lawn, bright and clear and whole. She's 8 now, all long legs and wild curls pulled into a messy braid, chasing butterflies with the butterfly net we bought her for her birthday. Her pink dress swirls around her knees as she spins, and there's not a shadow of grief in her eyes anymore. Mama. Mama, look. She points at a monarch perched on a rose bush. Can I catch it? Gently, I call back. Remember, we just want to say hello. Beside her, toddling on unsteady legs, is Marco. 2 years old with his father's dark eyes and my smile, he reaches chubby hands toward the butterfly, babbling in the mixture of Italian and English that makes up his current vocabulary. When the butterfly flutters away, he plops down on the grass with a shriek of delight. Farfalla, he shouts, the Italian word for butterfly that Antonio taught him. Si, amore mio, I murmur, though he's too far away to hear me. Farfalla. Arms circle my waist from behind, and I lean back into Antonio's chest without hesitation. He smells like cologne and the cigar he'd been smoking in his office, and his chin comes to rest on my shoulder. You're watching them like you're afraid they'll disappear, he says quietly. Old habit. I cover his hands with mine, feeling the cool metal of his wedding band against my palm. Though I'm getting better. You are. He presses a kiss to the side of my neck. 3 years, and you still tense every time a car pulls up to the gate. Can you blame me? His arms tighten around me. No. I do the same thing. But the threats have lessened over the years. After our wedding, a small private ceremony with Bella as our flower girl and enough security to guard a president, Antonio had made strategic moves. Alliances formed. Truces negotiated. The Torino family, the ones who'd planted the bomb, had been dealt with in ways I'd chosen not to ask about. The city still feared Antonio DeLuca. His empire still thrived, built on shadows and secrets I only half understood. But here in our home, behind these walls and guards, he was just a husband. A father. A man who sang Italian lullabies to our son and taught our daughter how to play chess. Marco's getting faster, Antonio observes as our son takes 3 wobbling steps before landing on his bottom again. Soon he'll be running circles around the guards. God help us all. I turn in his arms to face him. At 38, Antonio has a few more silver threads in his dark hair, laugh lines bracketing his eyes that hadn't been there 3 years ago. He's still devastatingly handsome, still commands a room with a single look. But time and love have softened some of his harder edges. How was your meeting? Tedious. Necessary. He cups my face, studying me with that intensity that still makes my breath catch. But all I wanted was to be here. With you. With them. You're getting soft, Mr. DeLuca. Only for you, Mrs. DeLuca. He kisses me, slow and deep, and I'm transported back to that first kiss 3 years ago, desperate and hungry and promising everything. We've built a life on that promise. Papa. Bella comes running, Marco toddling behind her with his nanny, Sophia, trailing protectively. Papa, I caught 3 butterflies and let them all go. Did you see? Antonio scoops her up despite her protests that she's too big for that now, spinning her until she giggles. I saw. You're very gentle with them. Your mother taught you well. Mama teaches me everything. Bella wraps her arms around his neck. She says the best way to love something is to set it free, but it always comes back if it's meant to be yours. My throat tightens. I told her that last year when we'd had to release a baby bird we'd been nursing back to health. I hadn't realized she'd remembered. Antonio's eyes find mine over Bella's head, and I see my own emotion reflected there. This little girl who'd been shattered by loss, who'd cried for 8 months straight, who'd called me mommy that first pivotal time, she was whole now. Healed. Ours. Your mama is very wise, he tells her. I know. Bella squirms down, then takes her baby brother's hand. Come on, Marco. Let's show Papa the garden we planted. We follow them through the roses, Antonio's hand finding mine, our fingers interlacing automatically. Sophia maintains a discreet distance, ever the professional. Around the perimeter, I can see the guards stationed at their posts, a reminder that danger never fully disappears in this life. But it's worth it. Every moment of fear, every close call, every night I wake from nightmares of masked men and gunfire, it's worth it for this. For Bella's laughter. For Marco's first steps. For Antonio's arms around me in the darkness, promising we'll face whatever comes together. As we walk, I find myself thinking back to that night. The night that changed everything. The ballroom glittering with chandeliers and champagne. The sound of a child crying. Everyone frozen, afraid to act. And me, just a tired waitress in a borrowed uniform, stepping forward with nothing but a lollipop and instinct. I hadn't known then that the choice would lead here. That the intimidating man with dark, desperate eyes would become my husband. That his broken daughter would become mine in every way that mattered. That I'd build a family in the shadows of an empire, learning to love a dangerous man with a tender heart. All I'd known was that a little girl needed someone. And I'd refused to look away. What are you thinking about? Antonio asks, reading my silence like he always does. The beginning, I admit. The wedding. That moment I decided to walk over to you and Bella. He stops walking, turning me to face him. Best decision anyone's ever made. Or the craziest. Both. He brushes a strand of hair from my face. You saved us, Emily. Both of us. You know that, don't you? We saved each other. I rise on my toes to kiss him. That's how love works. Mama. Papa. Bella calls from the flower bed. Come see. Marco's trying to eat the daisies again. We laugh, breaking apart to deal with our son's horticultural adventures. Antonio plucks Marco up, gently prying a daisy from his fist while Bella giggles. The late afternoon sun casts everything in gold, and for a moment, time seems to suspend. This is my life now. Not the struggling waitress working double shifts, drowning in bills and loneliness. Not the invisible woman serving champagne to people who'd never know her name. I'm Emily DeLuca, wife to a man who rules the shadows but kneels for his family. Mother to a daughter who found her smile again and a son who knows nothing but love. A woman who chose danger and found safety in the most unexpected place, in the arms of the most feared man in New York. Later, after Bella is tucked into bed with her favorite story and Marco is asleep in his nursery, I stand on the terrace where Antonio and I shared our first real conversation. He joins me, 2 glasses of wine in hand, and we watch the city lights glitter in the distance. Any regrets? He asks quietly. I think about everything I've gained. Everything I could have lost. The close calls and sleepless nights, the fear that still creeps in when cars backfire or strangers look too long at my children. But then I think about Bella calling me mama. About Marco's first word being my name. About Antonio's whispered I love yous in the darkness, fierce and protective and real. Not a single one, I tell him honestly. He pulls me against his side, his lips finding my temple. Good. Because I'm never letting you go. I'm counting on it. We stand there in comfortable silence, 2 people who found each other in the most unlikely circumstances. A mafia boss and a waitress. A broken man and a brave woman. A father who couldn't comfort his daughter and the stranger who could. Sometimes I think about the other people in that ballroom, the ones who stood frozen, too afraid to approach Antonio DeLuca. I wonder if they ever think about that night. If they remember the little girl crying. They probably don't. To them, it was just another awkward moment at a wedding. But to me, it was everything. Everyone else was too afraid to act. But I wasn't. Because in that moment, I didn't see a mafia boss or the danger his world carried. I saw a child who just needed a mother's love. And saying yes to that love, stepping forward when everyone else stepped back, choosing compassion over fear, gave me everything. A daughter who healed. A son who thrives. A husband who loves me with a fierceness that still takes my breath away. A family built in the shadows, yes. But filled with more light than I ever dreamed possible. That's the thing about love, it doesn't ask for permission or wait for the perfect moment. It simply asks if you're brave enough to say yes. I was. And I'd make the same choice 1,000 times over. Antonio's arms tighten around me as if he can hear my thoughts, and I lean into him, grateful for this impossible, beautiful life we've built. In the distance, thunder rumbles, a storm approaching. But here in his arms I'm home. And home, I've learned, isn't a place. It's choosing to love someone despite the dangers. It's saying yes when the world says no. It's a lollipop, a crying child, and a single moment of courage that changed everything.